A submarine looks like one machine from the outside, but inside, it feels more like a stack of compromises pressed into a steel tube. Space is never just space. It is access to a valve, room for a cable run, a path for a tired crew member, or a safety boundary that must stay clear. This list is not about secret rooms or cinematic drama. It is about what each zone does, what problem it solves, what limit it creates, and what it does to ordinary life on board. The strange part is simple. The boat is built for the mission first, the machinery second, safety all the time, and comfort only where a little space is left. 1. Command and control. This is the place where the submarine becomes understandable to the crew. Outside the hull, there is no open view like on a surface ship bridge, so the crew depends on instruments, procedures, sonar information, navigation data, communication systems, and disciplined reporting. The practical benefit is control. Depth, course, speed, trim, contacts, orders, and the condition of the boat all have to become clear enough for people to act. The limit is that too much information must fit into a very small working area. People stand or sit close together, movement is careful, and attention becomes part of the machinery. In many submarines, the control area is not large in the way a film set makes it look. It is a working cluster of consoles, indicators, charts or digital displays, voice circuits, alarms, and crew positions. Each station gives only part of the picture, so the room works because trained people combine their small views into one shared understanding. A bad layout here would not just be inconvenient. It could slow a decision, hide a warning, or make a simple order harder to confirm. That is why the control space feels dense, not decorative. Every panel earns its place by helping the crew keep the sealed boat predictable. 2. Passageways, hatches, and compartment logic. A submarine is not arranged like a house with rooms branching off a hall. It is a chain of compact compartments inside a pressure hull, with narrow routes that must serve people, equipment, cables, pipes, air lines, and emergency access at the same time. Hatches and boundaries are not just doors. They help divide the boat into zones, support safety procedures, and keep damage control possible if something goes wrong. The benefit is organization and survivability. The cost is slow movement. Even walking through the boat becomes a small negotiation with the machine. This is where the atmosphere of a submarine begins to feel physical. You move past panels, handles, lockers, pipes, labels, ladders, and people doing work in the same path you need to use. A passage may also be the only reasonable access route to equipment that must be checked, repaired, isolated, or operated. If storage blocks that route, or if a hatch cannot be reached quickly, a tidy interior becomes a safety problem. So the crew learns a different kind of manners. You do not just step aside for a person. You step aside for a whole system that might need attention. 3. Propulsion and power. This is the part of the submarine that reminds you the crew is living inside a working industrial machine. The exact arrangement depends on the type of boat. A diesel-electric submarine, an air-independent propulsion boat, and a nuclear-powered submarine do not carry the same machinery. But the basic job is consistent: provide movement, electrical power, reliability, and control while fitting inside a hull that cannot waste volume. Power systems bring heat, noise, vibration, maintenance access needs, and strict safety procedures. The benefit is mobility underwater. The consequence is that comfort has to stay humble. Machinery spaces are not background scenery. Pumps, motors, generators, turbines, batteries, switchboards, shafts, cooling systems, and support equipment all need monitoring and maintenance, depending on the submarine design. The crew must be able to reach the parts that fail, wear, leak, heat up, or need adjustment. That access space may look empty, but it is not spare room for comfort. It is the space that lets the boat keep functioning after hours and days of use. This is a very practical kind of luxury. Not a lounge, not a wider bunk, but enough clearance to fix the thing that keeps the vessel alive. Batteries are a good example of how submarine design favors reliability over elegance. On conventional submarines, large battery banks store the electrical energy needed for submerged operation, and they take up valuable protected space. They require ventilation, monitoring, charging discipline, and careful handling because stored energy is useful only when it stays controllable. Put the system in the wrong place, make it hard to inspect, or treat it as simple cargo, and the whole boat becomes less manageable. The human result is easy to feel. People live around heavy equipment that cannot be moved out of the way just because the compartment feels crowded. 4. Ballast, trim, and the systems that make the boat a submarine. A submarine dives and surfaces by managing buoyancy, mainly through ballast tanks and controlled movement of water and air. Trim systems help balance the boat so it does not behave like a badly loaded vehicle underwater. The practical benefit is obvious. The crew can control depth and attitude instead of merely sinking or floating. But the interior consequence is less obvious. Pipes, valves, indicators, controls, tanks, and procedures occupy space and attention because the boat must stay balanced even when people are tired and conditions change. These systems also show why submarine interiors can feel so disciplined. A surface ship can often show its state through visible motion, weather, and horizon. A submerged submarine hides most of that from the crew. The boat has to report itself through readings, alarms, routines, and repeated checks. If a valve position is misunderstood, or if water is moved through the wrong path, the problem is not abstract. It affects controllability. That is why many simple actions inside a submarine feel procedural. The crew is not being theatrical. They are keeping a heavy, sealed body in a safe relationship with the water around it. 5. Air, water, and environmental control. Around the middle of the boat tour, the most important spaces become the least visible. A sealed submarine is not livable just because people can fit inside it. It needs systems that manage oxygen, carbon dioxide, humidity, temperature, water supply, waste, and air circulation. Modern submarines can generate oxygen and remove carbon dioxide using dedicated equipment, while water is often produced or managed through onboard treatment systems, depending on the boat. The benefit is endurance. The barrier is dependence. Everyone breathes the result of whether the system works. Air quality is a quiet pressure on daily life. The crew may not see the full life support system every minute, but they live inside its output. Moisture from people, cooking, showers, machinery, and temperature changes has to be controlled because condensation can affect comfort and equipment. Carbon dioxide removal is not a nice extra. It is one of the conditions that lets people think, work, sleep, and respond safely. This is where discomfort becomes technical rather than dramatic. The air can feel processed, shared, and mechanical because, in a very real sense, it is. Water management has the same character. A submarine has to provide water for drinking, cooking, hygiene, and machinery needs, but it cannot treat water use like a normal building ashore. Storage, production, heating, pumping, drainage, and waste handling all compete with other systems for space and power. A poorly planned system would create more than inconvenience. It would create hygiene problems, equipment problems, and routine problems for the whole crew. So ordinary acts become controlled acts. A shower, a meal, or a cleaning routine is still human, but it passes through the logic of a sealed engineering plant. 6. Crew sleeping space and personal storage. This is where the machine touches the private life of the crew most directly. Berthing areas on submarines are compact because the hull volume is precious, and the boat must carry working systems, stores, spare parts, and mission equipment. Bunks are often narrow, storage is limited, and privacy is reduced. On some submarines and in some periods, crews have used hot bunking, where a bunk is shared by people on different watches. That practice is not universal, but it shows the design pressure clearly. Rest is fitted into the schedule, not the other way around. The benefit of compact quarters is that the boat can carry the people needed to operate it without making the hull larger than necessary. A larger hull can mean more cost, more complexity, and different handling demands, so extra room is never free. The everyday consequence is small but constant. Personal items must stay controlled, sleeping happens near work and noise, and the line between public and private space becomes thin. The discomfort is not a sudden panic, it is repetition. The same bunk, the same locker, the same narrow route, the same nearby machinery day after day. 7. Galley, mess, hygiene, and sanitation. A submarine still has to feed people, clean them, and keep them healthy. The galley is usually compact and practical, built around safe cooking, storage, serving, cleaning, and routine rather than comfort or decoration. Food storage matters because resupply is not simple once the boat is deployed, and early in a patrol, some submarines may store provisions in any approved spare space until supplies are used down. The benefit is endurance and morale. The limit is that smells, heat, shared surfaces, and tight schedules do not stay politely in one room. The boat absorbs daily life into its machinery. Eating spaces reveal another compromise. The mess is not just a dining area. It can become a meeting space, a brief rest area, a social pressure valve, and sometimes a place where work information passes quickly. That flexibility is useful because a submarine cannot afford many single-purpose rooms. But flexible space also means limited separation. The place where someone eats may be close to the route another person uses for duty. Hygiene follows the same rule. It exists, it is organized, and it matters. But water discipline, waste handling, and shared facilities remind everyone that the habitat is compressed. 8. Mission spaces and specialized workstations. This is the reason many comfort choices lose the argument. Different submarines are built for different roles, so mission areas can vary widely. They may include sonar spaces, communication areas, weapon handling spaces, scientific equipment, special operations support, or other dedicated work zones depending on the vessel. The shared principle is simple. Specialized tasks need protected equipment, trained operators, safe access, storage, and procedures. Those needs take volume before anyone asks for comfort. The boat is not cramped by accident. It is packed because the work requires it. Sonar and sensor-related spaces show the logic especially well. Underwater, sound is one of the main ways a submarine understands its surroundings, so listening, processing, and interpreting information become central tasks. The benefit is awareness without direct sight. The barrier is that equipment and people must work in controlled conditions, often with attention to noise discipline and careful communication. A careless sound, a confused report, or a poorly arranged workstation can reduce clarity when clarity matters most. For the crew, this means work is quiet, close, procedural, and mentally demanding rather than glamorous. Weapon or payload spaces, when present, are also layout problems before they are anything else. Torpedoes, missiles, mines, vehicles, or other payloads each bring handling rules, storage needs, safety boundaries, and access limits depending on submarine type. The practical benefit is capability. The cost is volume that cannot become bunks, lounges, wider passageways, or extra storage for personal comfort. Heavy objects inside a narrow hull must be secured and handled with discipline. This is why a submarine interior can feel less like a vehicle cabin and more like a workshop where every object has a rule attached to it. Workstations throughout the boat create the same feeling at a smaller scale. A panel may control power distribution, a console may handle communications, a station may monitor machinery, and a chart table or digital planning area may support navigation. None of these spaces needs to look dramatic to be important. They matter because they keep the boat coordinated. The barrier is cognitive density. Too many tasks, alarms, labels, and routines crowd the mind as much as the hardware crowds the passageway. That is why good submarine design tries to make necessary work repeatable, readable, and hard to misunderstand. 9. Safety, redundancy, and maintenance access. This is the final layer that governs all the others. A submarine interior is judged not only by how it works when everything is normal, but by how controllable it remains when something is strained, damaged, overheated, flooded, smoky, noisy, or confusing. Safety features vary by boat, but the broad ideas are consistent. Separation, monitoring, trained response, emergency equipment, damage control routes, and procedures that people rehearse. The benefit is survival of function. The cost is that the crew lives inside constant reminders that the machine must be respected. Redundancy sounds simple, but inside a submarine, it is never free. A backup system needs space, power, cables, pipes, controls, testing, maintenance, and people who know how to use it. If everything is duplicated without discipline, the boat becomes heavier, more crowded, and harder to understand. If too little is backed up, one failure can matter too much. The practical art is balance. This is the retro-engineering truth of the submarine interior. A clever idea survives only if it can be maintained, isolated, checked, and operated by real people in a confined hull. Maintenance access is one of the least glamorous spaces on board, and one of the most important. A removable panel, a clear path to a pump, a reachable filter, or a labeled valve can decide whether a repair is quick or painful. The crew cannot pull the submarine into a roadside workshop when a system complains. They have to inspect, diagnose, and often fix problems inside the same crowded environment where others are sleeping, eating, navigating, and standing watch. Bad access turns small faults into big delays. Good access looks boring until the moment it saves time, safety, and confidence. Drills and checks turn safety into routine. Crews practice responses because the interior can become confusing under stress, and because a sealed vessel gives little room for improvisation. Fire, flooding, power problems, air quality issues, and equipment faults all demand clear roles and fast communication. The everyday consequence is a disciplined atmosphere. A hatch is not just a hatch. A locker is not just a locker, and a passageway is not just a path. Every ordinary object may have a second life as part of a procedure when the boat needs to stay under control. 10. The whole submarine as one working organism. By the end of the tour, the interior stops looking like a collection of rooms. The control area makes the outside world readable. The passageways and compartments organize movement and separation. Power and propulsion give the boat life, but demand space and respect. Environmental systems make the sealed hull livable. Crew quarters, galley spaces, hygiene areas, and mission stations fit human routine into the gaps left by function. Safety systems tie everything together. The discomfort is not a design mistake by itself. It is the visible price of making the vessel useful. That is the main paradox inside a submarine. The more capable the boat is, the more its interior must answer to machinery, control, reliability, access, stores, procedures, and safety margins. A comfortable room that blocks a valve is not comfortable in any meaningful sense. A wider passage that removes needed equipment is not progress. A clever system that cannot be maintained at sea is not clever for long. So the submarine becomes a compact technical habitat, rational and inconvenient at the same time. Every meter has a job, and the people live inside the remaining margins.